Seattle Kraken hockey fans, Eric Lindsay Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken. As always, I want to thank you for making Locked On Kraken your first listen of the day. Now, we've got some updates from what I was planning to have for you on today. Not quite a Turbo Tuesday, although we do have a Brandon Tanev update. So let's get into the episode.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
As I mentioned a week ago, we got a Turbo Tuesday that we didn't really want. Brandon Tanev tore his ACL. But on this Turbo Tuesday, we are happy to announce that the Seattle Kraken have announced that Turbo had a successful surgery. So now it's all about that recovery. Dave Hakstol, coach of the Seattle Kraken, obviously, probably knew that. Dave Hakstol talked to media yesterday, and here's what he had to say about the importance of Brandon Tanev knowing that his teammates and his coaching staff and everyone in the Seattle Kraken family has his back.
Hey, Dave, thanks for doing this. Just got good news on Brandon Tanev's surgery and rehab. Should be back in time for next season. Your immediate reaction, and if you gotten the sense of how these guys have stayed with them emotionally?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a real positive that everything went well with the surgery. Now obviously there's a lot of work ahead for Brandon, but as you've come to see on the ice and the way he works and prepares, he's going to do all the work necessary, as he goes through his rehab here. And, it's interesting, you ask about the support of teammates and the importance of that. It is really important because it's a long time. And as you go through, especially a season-ending injury, that can weigh a little bit more heavily on you. And I know guys will take care of Turbo in that way, and he'll have a ton of support.
So along with everyone else, we're sending you good vibes, Turbo. We over here at Locked On Kraken want to make sure that you are hitting the ice come next season, and we wish you a speedy and solid recovery. Other updates. I thought we were going to have a Seattle Kraken game day this week. No, not so much. The Rona, Delta, and all her little friends and kids hit the NHL once again, and the Seattle Kraken game against the Ottowa Senators has been postponed. So I'm going to take you back over to Dave Hakstol. What are the Seattle Kraken going to do? Well, they're going to get in the most practice time that they've had in quite a while. And I'm pretty excited about what he and the Seattle Kraken are going to focus on.
Jeff.
Hi, Dave. With the Ottawa cancellation later this week, it means you're only going to play about a handful of games within a 3.5 week or almost a 4-week span. I'm just wondering what the challenges are for you as a coach, trying to simulate some of that game action in practice. I mean, it's great you get to have extra practices, but you don't get the benefit of those live games to see guys in actual competition. I'm wondering how you go about simulating that at your practices going forward.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm going to try not to wind all over the place here. We have to find the positives in it. And that's obviously it can be frustrating mid-season to have this large of a break. But as I look back over the last month, we've had a lot of stop and go. There's been a lot of days where there's been some indecision, some days where we've stayed away from the rink, due to some of, the threat of COVID and things like that. So, in reality, we really haven't had a ton of good practice time, over the last month, as we've come through the Christmas break and other things. So we have to really grasp that and take advantage of this week and have great quality practices. It's not the same as game action. We got to minimize, the effect as we get back into a game a week from now. But we have to do that by having great practices. This will give us an ability to get up and down the rink and skate a lot in practice, to execute in practice, to touch on some things that we haven't been able to touch on over the last month. And we, one of the biggest benefits for us that I believe we can use it for is just to clear our minds, get our thought process square and straight, and really get to work over the next few days as a group here in practice.
And finally, Seattle Kraken fans, with there not being any more games, we're going to keep taking you to practice. I'm going to keep taking you to some of the amazing conversations that I've had with hockey people around the sport. And that does include the second part of my conversation with Ann Kimmel, Rachel Donner, and Jess Belmosto talking about the USA rosters. We're going to get more into the men's roster and the sled hockey roster. If you haven't listened to Ann Kimmel talk over on Locked On Predators, check that out. Highly recommend it. Although I will add, Locked On Predators, come on. The gold medalists are the show. The NHL, sure, they're the names, but the gold medalists are the show. Just to be clear. Period, point blank. Let's head over to the second part of my roundtable with the fabulous women of Locked On NHL, Ann, Rachel, and Jess. Remarkable in the worst way possible. Truly, truly remarkable. And yet, somehow, I am disappointed in myself because I have spoken on Locked On Kraken how I watched not even 10 minutes of a TNT broadcast and realized very quickly it was not for me. Because the first time I ever watched a TNT broadcast, Wayne Gretzky talked through not one, but 2 goals in live action. So
that is true. That happened.
So that was very, very troubling. But fret not, everyone from the Locked On family, between the 4 of us, we are going to appropriately celebrate the roster that we did get.
Yes.
And with the help of Ann, do our best to celebrate the rosters that are to come.
Correct.
We're going to get back into talking about the U.S. women's national team, the only roster that we officially have. But for right now, I want to remind you that if you got a beard, you got to get primal. That's right. You heard me correctly. You got a beard, you got to get primal. If you or someone you care about has a beard, it needs to get primal. Maybe they're that person that has never considered the benefits of treating your beard with product. But Primal Origin Oil is the product that will help you stop that itch and make your beard look healthy and groomed. And I can tell you, I've never grown a beard, but I've been around people that have, and grooming a beard is critical for all those that are around you. This product is free from harmful synthetic ingredients, and it has a low impact on the planet. Primal Origin Oils makes balms, oils, and whipped butter that are renowned as the best feel in the beard product industry. And they are willing to put their brand to the test. So we know that every company says that they have the best. But again, Primal Origin Oils is willing to put that to the test. So they want you to try Primal Origin Oils in your beard and compare their ingredients to all the other beard products on the market, and they promise you will see and feel the difference. So when you use promo code Locked On, you will get 20% off at primaloriginoils.com. Again, use that promo code Locked On for 20% at checkout over at primaloriginoils.com. So let's get down to this, because even though TNT fumbled the bag and did not understand the assignment, it sounded like Target Field, they did. And one of the cool things is that USA Hockey, the day after the Winter Classic or sometime after, they put out the video. And so when Jen Botterill is talking about the crowd noise, you can't really hear the crowd noise in the video that they posted, which is unfortunate. But what you can see are just like the faces, especially of those with Minnesota ties. And just in their reactions, I feel like they felt the crowd, even if we can't hear it in the video. So let's go with Rachel Who was your favorite, or who had your favorite reaction from the crowd shot that USA and the USA Hockey video that was put out?
I think it was Caroline Harvey. She was kind of a deer in headlights, and you could see it when Savannah Harmon was getting introduced. You could see her in the background, like total deer in headlights, and then all of a sudden the camera was on her, and then she started smiling in this like really awkward smile and waving, and I just was like, yes, this is the moment. This is your moment. It was very funny. It was very funny.
That was a good one. Jess, how about you? Who was your favorite?
I'm gonna have to piggyback off of Rachel because like it's as somebody who does not know how to like introduce myself or like celebrate myself in like those situations, I would probably be doing something very similar.
I am going to divert a little bit here, although I do think that was there were a bunch of great reactions, but my personal favorite was Grace Zumwinkle. First time, named for the first time to an Olympic team. And she just like, was just like doing that laugh where you just like can't stop shaking your shoulders and waving. And it was the cutest thing. Now, and we know that you don't know the names of most of the players. And unfortunately, TNT didn't help with that. But if you were able to see that video, was there any moment in that video that stood out to you?
You know what's so funny that stood out to me the most in that whole video, and this sounds really hokey, but it's just what's real, is the girls behind the women stick tapping.
And I was
like,
come
on. I loved that. And I'm thinking, can you imagine being one of the young girls chosen to stand there while Olympians are introduced in front of you and you get to stick tap for them? Like, there is something so beautiful about watching something like Olympians through the eyes of future Olympians or people who understand and have a reverence for what it takes to do that. And so for me, the mom in me was just like, that is so beautiful. Let's look at this next generation who someday may be the ones who say, I was standing there when these women were introduced for the 2022 Beijing Olympics, and now here I am. Like, I just loved that.
Yeah. And you know why I think that's important? Even though I have talked critically about the hashtag MyWhy tour and stuff like that on this podcast, is because what TNT did give us was like maybe 60 seconds or so of a feature on Hillary Knight. Although they didn't provide the context that this will be her fourth Olympic team, which would have been helpful for people like Anne, who, might have seen her on SNL, but really don't know why she's talking. Anyway, I digress. But what Hillary Knight shared, and it's a story that she's told before, is that she remembers telling her grandmother that she was going to be an Olympian and she was going to play hockey at the Olympics. And at the time that she told her grandmother that, women hadn't even competed in their first Olympic tournament.
Yes. And
she told her grandmother that she was going to do it, and she did it. And she now is one of, again, just a handful, less than a handful of women who have represented the United States at 4 Olympic Games. Like, that is why. That is the my why, right? That's why representation matters. And so, again, without the context, without the full context on the TNT broadcast, you really miss an opportunity. You miss an opportunity to tell someone growing up in Idaho, like Hillary Knight did, however many years ago, that, yeah, this is something that you can do. And here are some of the names of people that you should investigate to figure out how they got there so that you can, find some tips and do the same. So that's, I think, what is so disappointing, on top of the fact that it's almost expected, not almost, it is expected that women's hockey is going to get the short end of the stick, even when it's a national team that is a gold medal winning championship team from the last Olympics. But Anne, I feel like you might know something about that. The disrespect, as we say in the WNBA, particularly the Connecticut, like CT, get it? Anyway. They go so hard on that. It is hilarious. Anyway, but Anne, that's not the only team that is representing the United States in China that has an Olympic gold medal from 2018 that at least the women were kind of sort of there, but sled hockey, where they at? Do we even know who's on the roster?
So yeah, I was waiting with bated breath, to say, okay, well, that didn't go great with the women. Maybe they'll bring the sled hockey team out. And I kept looking in the background, like anybody, and there was nothing. And so I reached out to a couple of my sled hockey friends, and I have not heard back yet. Logistically, I understand that the sled hockey team has a little bit longer to submit their official roster because the Paralympics start in the beginning of March. So they have a little bit more time. And I will tell you that they like to take as much time as they can because there is so much depth in the sled hockey community to really pick their people. Now, I don't think you have to be Scooby-Doo to figure out Josh Pauls, who was, the captain last year, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say he's going to be on the team. And so for me, as somebody who feels like this is the same, this is a group of men, that's for another podcast perhaps.
Yes.
But this is
that's our part three.
Part three. This is another group of athletes who are going to represent this country in international competition. And they're really great at it. They won in just an absolute thriller of an overtime match against Canada for the gold medal in 2018. They won at the World Championships in 2021 after losing their very first game to Canada in that competition, and came back and won against Canada in the gold medal match. This is a group of athletes who are ready to represent this nation in a very competitive sport and a super exciting sport. And there was just nothing. And so for me, it was frustrating. And I also I just don't want to see this delineation between Olympics and Paralympics, because what you have are just phenomenal professional, amateur in theory, but athletes who are committing their lives to competing for this country, and to not have that be there and be represented and be celebrated at the same time, for me was a little bit disappointing. But we will have that roster. When that roster comes out, you all will know, and we will break it all down.
#SquadCast.
That's right.
But Jess,
and I really appreciate that comment about not delineating between the Olympics and the Paralympics. I think, I lived in Salt Lake City at the time of the 2002 Olympics, and I think that's probably the biggest lesson that I took out of it, having been in and around the games for the full breadth of it, and that the excitement was just as high for the Paralympics, and I think it's important.
Yes. Yeah. And the amount of time and investment and training, and it's just astounding to me that people might not view the Paralympics as athletes who are as invested in their craft and in their sport, because these sled hockey players are all in. So yeah, that's a one for me, where I thought I love the idea of the Olympic teams and the Paralympic teams being announced together, but that didn't happen at all.
It's a shame. It's a shame. And I'll put this link in the show notes, especially because I just love to mention that it happened at Citi Field. That has no bearing on the information. Like, the Mets had nothing to do with that per se, but it just makes me feel good as a Mets fan. Anyway, it's not about me, but what we did see is that all of those rosters were announced together, and there were highlights from all three U.S. teams that would be, again, representing at the Winter Games, the Olympics and Paralympics, and we missed that. But another piece of this equation, and I guess we all talk about men's hockey on our daily podcast, so we should maybe talk about the men too, because equality. Anyway, I was trying so hard to say that with a straight face, and then I broke. Anyway, but Jess, we don't have the men's roster either. We do know that NHL players are not going. So at least for the Kraken, that means that for Philip Grubauer and Alexander True, who's in our feeder system, that they will not have the opportunity to represent their respective countries. But when do you think we're going to get that men's roster? Like, TikTok here.
Yeah. I don't like, part of me thinks that it was delayed because they were waiting for this COVID situation with the NHL to sort itself out. And because the NHL promised the players, yes, you're going, because we put you in bubble cities. And that's what, and now it's been taken away and whatnot. I think maybe there was some sort of hopefulness that they would still get the NHL players. But I would say hopefully by the end of this week or next week, because I don't know. I don't know who these players are. I don't.
They might like to practice.
Yeah, that too. That might be important, especially before going across the world.
Well, and I know coaching staffs too. Predators head coach John Hines was supposed to travel to the Olympics and do some assistant coaching there. My heart goes out to whoever they recruit now to do some coaching, because, you talk about being kind of under the gun to get the team together and get it moving and get it coached and kind of systems updated on the same direction. I mean, this is going to be a challenging role for anybody.
Right. And I mean, the head coach of the U.S. men's team should be banned from hockey to begin with. And then you have the former coach who was also involved in a cover-up, and then the coach before him was also involved in a cover-up. So maybe we just need to stop giving men's hockey so much credit. And I don't know. Yeah. That's my hot take for the day. No more men's hockey.
No more men's hockey. Yeah, they've got some things to work out. But presumably they will field a team. I would argue that of all of the teams that could be splashed together last minute and be a medal contender, the men's team is not the one of the three. But, we'll see what happens there. I do wonder, Rachel, we saw, of course, that the World Juniors the show must go on, and then they tried, and then COVID and Rona Omarion and them said, nah, we're not doing this. But Rachel, one thing that you mentioned that I did want to get to, World Juniors is massive in the hockey world. It's an opportunity to see young talent up and coming from literally across the world. And I do think there's a lot more equity when it comes to talking about other national teams outside of North America when it comes to World Juniors, because of how, if we're being honest, international players perform at the NHL level. But something else, and we alluded to the doorbell camera earlier, but between world championships, and you and I talked about this on the sled hockey side, between the cancellation of world championships, all kinds of different boycotts for equity, and no U18s on the women's side for the last 2 seasons, the women's hockey landscape, Rachel, has looked very different since the last time that we had the Olympic tournament in 2018. In what ways do you think that will impact not just this roster, but how we feed the women's pipeline moving forward?
I think it's been very difficult for some of the younger players to get, what they can do out there, because these top flight tournaments have been canceled or postponed and then never heard from again. Whereas, they find a way to make the men's tournaments happen. And, obviously, even though World Juniors was canceled, in midstream, they at least tried to do it. And I think that there's some sort of effort to try and reschedule it and kind of reboot World Juniors. So I don't see why they can't do that for the U18s, and to have not had that opportunity for, and to your point, Erica, about not just USA and Canada, this is, the Finnish national team, the Swedish national team, like other teams have quality hockey players on them. And the women's game is growing in quality around the world. And so to have, the feeder system, much like World Juniors is in some ways to the NHL in terms of a showcase for potential draftees, you need these U18 tournaments to be a showcase for potential Olympic teams. And to not have that, and then the doorbell cam from the last year that it did happen, where you just logged onto a stream with no commentary, that was a fisheye lens that you couldn't even watch. I mean, how is anybody supposed to get to know these players as fans, and then how are people supposed to market themselves as potential candidates for future Olympic teams?
Yeah, it's really tough, and we do see that we have some youngsters on this USA women's team, Caroline Harvey and Abby Murphy at 19. The average age is 25.9 years old, so basically 26. But we know that there's some teenagers represented. Usually we do see a great deal of players that are still in the college system. That's been changing, I think, on the women's side at least. USA Hockey's actually been getting older. I think that is, if I'm being honest, because you still have Hillary Knight, Brianna Decker, Kendall Coyne-Schofield playing. I wonder what that's going to look like, though.
Yeah, although I do want to give some props to Haley Skamura, because she's been around. Like, she played at Northeastern. She was on the Buffalo Buttes in the NWHL for, I think, 3 years. She's been skating with the PWHPA. Like, she has been around, and this is her first time on the Olympic team, and I am so happy and proud of her.
So proud. Also very thankful that you got that in there, because regardless of how you feel, and we'll bring you up to snuff on all of that drama on another podcast, but regardless of how you feel, and Haley Skamura is the first member of a U.S. women's Olympic team to come through the domestic, as in the United States, professional league. That has never happened before, because there never was a women's professional league in the United States. We had the CWHL, of course, which is Canadian based. And there were players and athletes that represented the United States that played in the CWHL. Julie Chu, one of them, Hillary Knight. I mean, we could go on and on and on. But Haley Skamura is the first time we can say that, because there was women's professional hockey in the United States, that now this athlete had an opportunity to enter into the senior women's national team program. And I think that is amazing.
Yeah, she was not even
like that.
We're all excited.
We're like, yes.
She was not in the conversation when she was in college, and she would not have had a shot were it not for the professional ranks. Absolutely.
So you mean like there is a benefit to women's professional sport?
What? No, that can't be it.
Interesting. I will take that up with first name bunch of numbers on Twitter. It's crazy that, oh, well, women's teams aren't that good. Like, they're not profitable. Because you don't know that. You don't know what these people's business side things look like. Number two, when you are watching some of the most talented players in the world through that little fisheye lens, and you're just supposed to squint and try to watch it, you're not getting anything from it. So last year when the NWHL playoffs were on Twitch, and when that deal was announced, that was so exciting, because I was still a newer fan, and I didn't know where to watch games or how to watch games. And to be able to bring people in, especially because it is a free platform, and then you get the ESPN Plus deal on top of it. There's so much available for you to watch when people actually want to put their money behind it. And that's a whole nother podcast. Yeah. But
well, I mean, and going off of that, Jess, I'm just curious, and I have no idea, because I didn't think to ask you this, and until right now, but what was your first exposure to women's hockey, just at all?
Okay, so that's so funny you asked me, because I'm almost a little bit embarrassed as to what it is, except that I was all in. And it was when they were going to do the bubble last year, and the Twitch said, "Hey, you can watch this free." And I was like, I love hockey. And there was some sort of a marketing social media thing where they said, you need to pick your favorite team. And I thought, well, okay, I'm ready. And so they had different videos, and I swear to you, and I'm embarrassed about this, and yet I stand by it, that I was like Connecticut Whale all the way because of Fins Up. Like, that's all it took for me to go to their website and to buy the t-shirt and to literally put the games in my calendar so that I knew, sit down, pull that sucker up, and to be able to, in the chat, talk with people who knew I was reading this chat and I'm thinking, I'm getting so smart. And, that's all it took, because I really think when you open the door for women's hockey, the product sells itself.
Mm-hmm.
I was all in. All I needed was this little, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but it worked for me, this little social media campaign about, here are the teams, here are some of the players, here's why they think you should root for their team. And I was like, Fins Up, I'm in. And that was it. That was it. And it was worth it. It was so worth it, because when I tuned into the product, it was exciting. I just needed the door.
Wow. I love that. And you know what? You've all been guests. You have all been a guest on Locked on Kraken before. And as you know, I like to ask my guest, how did you fall in love with hockey? But now, Anne, you've just given me a thought, and we'll close on this. But we're going to remix that. And Anne, you told your story. Yep. But Rachel and Jess, tell me how you fell in love with women's hockey.
Ooh. So growing up, my aunt played in a bunch of adult leagues, and we would go and we'd watch her. And then a few of my friends in high school played at a really competitive style. I'm not athletic by any means, but I think I can judge players pretty well, assess them. And then when I began writing about sports and writing specifically about hockey, I followed the Ice Garden and really started, to absorb women's hockey. I didn't really write about it because I felt like I didn't know enough. And, I just kind of stood back from afar and absorbed information and kind of got familiar with the league and, what to watch and who to watch. And I just kind of fell in love with it. I think it's just, they're all really nice people, at least the people that I've met and spoken to. And it's a good community out there, and we have each other's back. And I think that's what's important.
I think for me, it goes back to that 2002 Olympics experience that I had. I had the fortune of being in graduate school at the University of Utah at the time, and the school shut down for the Olympics, obviously, because they turned the dorms into the Olympic Village and all of that. And so we all got jobs during the games. And so I worked at the Medals Plaza downtown, where they, did the award ceremonies every night. And so when the women's, I went to some of the games too. Like, my mom came out to visit, and we went and saw 2 of the women's tournament games in the round robin. So it was just such a thrill to be able to see those games. But then with my job, when they did the medal ceremony for the women's hockey event, which, very sadly, it was Canada that won that year, but we're not going to talk about that. But the greatest moment of my life probably was when I got to talk to Julie Chu, kind of behind the scenes. She let me try on her medal. She was the nicest human being on this planet. And that was it. I was like, I am a women's hockey fan for life. And in fact, it got me eventually, it took me a few years after that, but I put on some skates and I learned how to play hockey myself and started playing in beer leagues and whatnot in Utah as a result of that whole thing. But yeah, that USA team in 2002, especially Julie Chu, will forever hold a special place in my heart.
Okay. There are so many cool things about that story. Like, first of all, they gave y'all jobs. What?
Well, I had to get the job myself. Like I had to apply for it, but it just that's what we all did because there was nothing else to do
Okay.
during
I
that
thought it was
break.
like, oh, we're just going to use the students. I was like, that's
And they just
pretty
kicked you
dope.
out of your dorms. Like that's
Well, no, I mean I had an apartment because I was in grad school.
okay. That makes sense.
It was just the undergrads that got kicked out.
Well, damn.
And
But
Who needs Olympics are here?
yeah,
right, exactly.
F your education.
Yeah.
Like,
We'll put you up in a hotel. It's fine.
oh my gosh. And yes, Julie Chu, I've gotten a chance to interview her a handful of times, and she is such a delight.
she is, and I got to eventually I went to skate at her and Caroline's women's clinic that they do up in Montreal, and so I got like taught how to play hockey better by Julie and Caroline and some other great Olympians. And it was
Incredible.
Amazing.
It was
That
fun.
so cool. I'm like geeking out from your story. Like, can't stop smiling. Wow. Okay. So what I've determined is we need to talk about women's hockey more on the Locked On platform. And you're all invited back, like always. But we should do this more often. Julie Chu stories, I'm totally here for it. I talk about how my sister got me into hockey, but it was Julie Chu that got my sister into hockey. So really, you know, like
She does that.
of Julie Chu or whatever. Like she's the Kevin Bacon or whatever. So or like Kevin Bacon wishes he was Julie Chu.
Mhm.
How about that? But this was fantastic. But Jess and Rachel, thank you so much for joining me to celebrate the women's national team, to ask a lot of questions as to who else is going to represent the United States. And we're just going to have to do it again because, you know, we're counting down the days until we get to Beijing. It is definitely a different world from the last time we had a Winter Olympics. But as with all of the Olympians and the staff, and of course, everyone, myself included, going to China, we want to make sure everyone stays as healthy and safe as possible. And for all of our listeners, thank you so much for listening to Locked On Flyers, Flames, Predators, and of course, Locked On Kraken. And we'll catch you sometime tomorrow. All right, folks. So I had to remix this a little. You probably saw if you're watching on YouTube, the ad reads. I was wearing a different outfit because I pre-recorded that. I know I'm telling you all the secrets, but you noticed anyway, so it's all good. Okay, so tomorrow we'll stay with the Seattle Kraken. Later in the week, I do want to take you. I mentioned last week. Again, Everett Fitzhugh was our 100th episode. Check that out. I'm pointing up to it here, also placing the link in the show notes if you're listening wherever you listen to podcasts or if you're watching on YouTube. But I mentioned that I had a little bit of extra with Everett Fitzhugh, and that is because we talked about the Black Hockey History Museum that's on tour right now. If you follow me at elindsay08, that's ELINDSAY08, you know that I will be working with American Legacy Network, not only for my coverage of Black athletes in Beijing, China at the Winter Olympics, but also I will once again be working the Black Hockey History Museum, including the stop in Seattle that's coming up in April. But if you want all of the dates for the Black Hockey History Museum, check out the link that I have. I'm also going to pop it up on the screen for you here. I will be in New York. Then once I come back from the Olympics, I will be in Detroit. I mentioned I will be in Seattle. I'm also planning to be at the Kings, at the Ducks, and in Arizona. I think those are all of the sites that I'm going to, but I'll keep you updated. You can follow me personally. Please follow American Legacy Network. They do a fantastic job every year for the past 3 years with the Black Hockey History Museum, and I am so honored to work with them on this and, of course, to partner with them for my coverage of Black athletes at Beijing Olympics. And it's not looking like we're going to have too many people in the ice hockey competitions. We do know Sarah Nurse from the Canadian women's team. We'll see who's on the men's team per what I talked about with Anne and Jess and Rachel. But great things coming this week on Locked On Kraken, even though we won't have a Seattle Kraken game day for a little while. But I'll keep you updated on what we do know. As always, I'm reminding you as part of Kraken Nation to hold fast, to stay true, and hey, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you tomorrow.